All right. So thank you for joining us today for teaching about New York State Climate Act with Medinah Eatman from WHYMAKER. Medinah is a science kit educator for over 11 years, and in the past 2 to 3 years, she's been providing professional development for educators on the topic of clean energy and hands-on learning practices. Our goal for hosting STEAM Skills webinars is to showcase the quality STEAM curriculum and resources being conducted in New York State, share these resources with New York State educators and the community, and connect educators and STEAM professionals with each other to enhance the STEAM community in New York. Thank you again for joining us today. And if you have any suggestions for other topics, or if you would like to share some of the resources you use in your classroom or in your programming, we'd love to hear about that. And I do have a survey at the end of the session that I'll be sharing with you then. So we're going to get started now for today's webinar, and I'm going to pass it over to Medinah.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Medinah. Thanks for having me. I'm just going to share my screen for today's slides. Okay, and let me know if you can see it okay once it loads. There we go. Can everyone see my slides okay? Yes, it's up? Okay,
Yep,
great.
all good.
All right. Perfect. So today's webinar is called Teaching About Clean Energy and Activities that You Can Use. So we've been going around for the past 2 years with WhyMaker all around New York State, helping to inspire and teach educators how to go about infusing clean energy practices into our classrooms, making it hands-on and fun, and really trying to educate the next generation of citizens out there who will be making these decisions for us. So has anyone here heard of the New York State Climate Act? Here's some no's. A little something, nothing at all. First time, no. Well, that ends up happening a lot. Everywhere we go, it's like, oh yeah, no, I don't really hear much about it, or maybe I heard a little bit of it, but don't really know exactly what it is. And how does this really pertain to me as an educator? And so New York's is the nation's leading climate agenda, is the most aggressive climate agenda in the nation. So New York is in the forefront of this. It calls for an orderly and just transition to a clean energy economy that creates good paying jobs and fosters healthy communities. So it's twofold. Not only making sure that we're on the climate agenda, but making sure that we're providing these good jobs for our next generation of citizens who are coming in and even those who are transitioning, as well as healthy communities. We don't want to put something in a community and it ends up making the community unhealthy or sickly and stuff like that. And we'll go through that when we look at environmental justice a little bit. And so some of the targets that New York State is really trying to get to, and as you see, look at these numbers where we are now and some of their targets. It's very, very close into the near future. 2025, 2030, 2035, where clean transportation, for example, right here, by 2035, 100% of light duty zero emission vehicles will be clean energy by 2035. And so that doesn't mean that by 2035 you have to get rid of your car that you have now. It's more or less any new cars that are being sold needs to have these zero emission vehicles. And so that's going to be by 2035, which is very, very soon. Clean energy by 2050, 85% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from 1990 levels. So we're working expeditiously, very quickly on these goals. And there's a couple of things that we are doing, and you'll see that in the next couple of slides. But the reason why I bring this up first is for us to think about our students. Why is this important for them to know? So if New York State has these goals that they're very aggressive about, that means a lot of these jobs are going to be opening. There's going to be, even for like as a science teacher, a STEM teacher, I like to think of it in the sense of like we're educating students for jobs that aren't even created yet. And so them being able to have the skills that we haven't really used yet comes with that STEM, with the engineering design, with critical thinking and being able to communicate and really looking at pros and cons of within government. And it doesn't only have to be STEM, right? Talking about governmental as well. How do you read these documents? We need somebody to be able to communicate to the people in the area on these changes that are happening. And these are just some of the how the targets are progressing thus far. So solar power, as you see, and renewable generation are the going the quickest. Offshore wind, they're working on the outskirts of Long Island, um, closer, further out in Long Island, very, very far in Long Island, out by the shore. They're starting to build these offshore wind turbines. And we're looking for the offshore wind turbines better than the land turbines because they'll be able to spin at a steady rate. They're out of the way. And I've been doing a lot of research to make sure that it's safe for the animals, safe for the area, the shipping. We don't want to make block off any of the shipping that has to come in and out of, especially New York and stuff like that. But offshore wind is one of those that's going to be coming very quickly over here in New York City. Any questions so far before I jump into environmental justice? Okay. Now, thinking about environmental justice, as we pivot into these clean energy practices, we have to consider where are we going to put solar panels? Where are we going to put wind turbines? Where are we going to put these things? We also have to think about the whole life cycle. After the wind turbine blade maybe is finished, it stops working, or after the solar panels stop working, where are we putting the the trash, the garbage? What are we going to do with this? How are we going to recycle it? And so we have to consider the whole life cycle of these newish, they're not really new, but these, if we're changing the way that it already is, we have to make sure that we are considering the entire life cycle of these things here. And so that's what brings into environmental justice, where in those areas, making sure that they have a say of what's happening in their area. So I'm going to share this link with you, but there's these really cool websites that you can use for you, but also for your students. We like to give it to them and they can put in their address and they can see what are some examples of environmental injustice that's happening. So I used to teach in the Bronx, and in the Bronx, we know that there's a lot of high pollution. And so one of the things you'll see on the map is that, oh, there's a lot of people who have this type of cancers or asthma, and things like that. And so they're able to look at like, oh, okay, because probably the cross Bronx, we have high pollution in this area. We're getting um, maybe pollution from the Hudson River area, wherever it's coming from. And it depends on which area you live in. Everyone's environmental injustices look a little different. So that's just something I do want you to explore first. And I'm going to share this link for you, and then we'll go back to that here. But it's a really cool link for us to observe a little bit, but also something for your students to see. There we go. I just put that link in the chat for you. That's this one. So go ahead and try to put in your where you are. You can put in based off of zip code, city and state, and take a couple of minutes and explore. What do you see? What do you notice in your area or your school's area? And then once you're finished exploring that for a little bit, I'll give you about a minute or so. We're going to break you off into groups, into pairs. And then I'll share with you the questions right here, what I want you to discuss in your group. So in your groups, I want you to discuss these two questions. What is causing this community to be identified as disadvantaged? And what are some possible solutions to combat the issue? Abigail, whenever you are ready, they can go into there.
You'll just have 5 minutes to chat amongst yourselves.
Welcome back. Welcome back. All right, let's talk a little bit about what we found or saw that we can share with the other group. What stood out most for you, or how do you even think, like, okay, I could probably use this in my classroom this way? What can we share?
I like that it's very specific because it kind of makes it real for the students if they can see exactly where they live and any issues that are in their immediate area. There's a lot of, we're in the 97th and Superfund sites. So that's
Wow,
eye opening.
definitely.
Yeah, in Albany area, like Superfund came up, and then lead paint was pretty high. And then like within 5 kilometers of hazardous material sites or something. So that was interesting.
Yeah, wow. And I wonder if for Albany, if those buildings, whatever the age of the buildings are, maybe they need to be updated, older, just older building I'm thinking of.
Yeah, we just abated all of our asbestos paneling along our outer gym walls. So
Wow.
we got some
Wow.
great government grants to get that. All of them are off now, and then they're putting the new panels on as we speak. So it's a great upgrade for us here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
movement, definitely. Thank
Yep.
you. Anyone else? Any other findings? Anything that stood out for you or might be helpful to your class?
We are having a Central New York Youth Climate Summit in February, and it's usually about 70 students from, I don't know, 10, 15 different school districts come together on the SUNY ESF campus. And I'm thinking if they research using this site, what's happening in their local districts, it'll help them with action planning and where they want to like put their efforts the second half of the day when they action plan.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I really love about it, is them being able to make a plan for what they want to do next. What can we do as a community to help our school community or wherever they live community? So it's not so much of a sad, sad thing when they look like, oh man, I can't believe all this pollution, or man, I can't believe this. It's more or less like, all right, now that we figured this out, what can we do next? Who can I talk to in my community, and how can we do better? All right. And so one of the activities that we do have them do, our teachers in the professional development, but also our students that we teach, is to create a flyer on Canva, highlighting a solution that may alleviate some of the concerns they identified from the environmental justice map. So they're able to take action right away. They get to decide who they want to create this flyer for. Do they want to create it for the board members at a meeting? Do they want to create it for their community? Maybe there's this big fair happening and they want to do it just for the community. They want to make a flyer for their school, their principal, something that they want to change. And so one of the activities that we love for them to do is to create this flyer. Just think of the next step, because sometimes it is daunting for our students to look at a lot of the negative effects that have happened and not think of the good that can come out of, now that we know better, we can do better. And that's just an activity. And so we do have workshops for educators. If you go to www.cleanenergyforeducators.com, where our next one is our last one for this year is in Syracuse. It's open to any New York State certified teachers currently teaching grades 4 to 12. You get clean energy lesson plans, materials. You get a big bag of materials to take with you, CTLE credits, and stipend, which teachers always love. It is on a Saturday, which we made it for some teachers who not necessarily were able to take a day off. So you can feel free to do the QR code, check it out, see if there's any information. But the New York State Clean Energy Workshops is a couple of this, a little bit of this information. We go more in depth. We give you the hands-on activities to really engage your students and the physical materials to do so. So not just the lesson plans and the ideas, but you get a bag of materials to bring it straight home to your classroom and get started with it right away. And that's usually, as a teacher, that's one of the best things. Like we don't have unlimited materials to start something new. So if we're able to go back to the classroom, we already have materials, will be more easy. It'll be a little easier for us to give it a try and test it out. Some of the things that we learn about in these workshops is electric grids, electric mix, power generation and distribution, New York State legislative process, and environmental justice. And then specifically for our Syracuse workshop, I'm going to be diving into building decarbonization and weatherization. Our teachers have loved our building decarbonization lesson, where we in the summer we really do these really big homes that are almost like playhouses or dog houses, where the teachers work in groups and they build a home that has been decarbonized. So whether they want to add a wind turbine, they want to add a solar panel, they might lighten the roof, but also their insulation. And it's a design challenge where they're supposed to keep the ice from melting to show us how well insulated their home is. And thinking about the homes that you said in Albany, or the buildings in Albany, being able to have these homes and buildings energy efficient and decarbonizing them is one of the first big steps that we have to do, is because 85% of all buildings will use clean heating and cooling by 2050, which is soon, very, very, very soon. And buildings, a lot of times people think of like just their homes, but it's all buildings that need to be decarbonized. In New York City, they talk a lot about the train stations that are very old, where it gets really, really hot in there. Like, how healthy could it be breathing all that air underground in the subways? So just thinking about overall. Some of the things to think about when we are decarbonizing buildings is energy efficiency, so that buildings do not need to use as much energy to operate. So adding wall insulation, LED light bulbs, Energy Star appliances, those you might see when you're shopping around, smart thermostats, conserving energy by turning off lights and appliances. We had a field trip with our group of teachers to the Jacob Javits Center in the city, and they are very high on decarbonizing their building, where they don't even turn on their what is it called? Escalators midday, Monday through Thursday or something. The all escalators are only on Friday, Saturday, Sunday when they have those big events, because they're like, there's no point. Everyone could take the stairs, or it's just skeletal workers. We'll keep one escalator on and an elevator on if you need it, but they shut off because that's such a big building using so much energy, that they found ways in order to help with their energy efficiency. Electrification, replacing equipment in the building that uses fossil fuels with the latest electric technology. So replacing your furnace, which burns natural gas, with a heat pump, which uses only electricity to heat and cool your home. So changing to an electric stove. Some people love it, some people don't. But that's another way that we can decarbonize our buildings. Another one is using renewable energy. So once all the gas equipment has been replaced and the building is all electric, whenever possible, we want to use electricity that comes from renewable resources that doesn't create greenhouse gas emissions. So that's our solar, wind, hydroelectric. We're looking for, now that we need energy, what can we do so that it's a renewable energy source and not necessarily something that's going to emit these toxic gases. And then manage electricity load, shift energy use to different times of the day to reduce the impact on the energy grid and reduce carbon emissions even more. So when we need like in the wintertime, when we need more heat, and then in the summertime when we need more air conditioning, daytime versus nighttime we need more light. So just managing the load so that it's not always on, having so much. This is a great, initially in the beginning of this, I was talking about the life cycle of anything, but this is decarbonizing the building life cycle. So we want to decarbonize the entire life cycle, not just, let's say, the car, right? Let's say we have a car, it's an electric car, and it works great. So now there's no emissions. Great. But now what do we do with the when the battery is dead? What do we do with that battery? What do we do when in the beginning, in the product stage, where are we getting our raw material and supply from? Is it coming from overseas on boats that maybe are creating a lot of pollution? So this is a long term issue per se, opportunity for us to do better in each one. So right now, maybe they're trying to decarbonize just the actual building, but we are looking for, and that's why I started in the beginning talking about our students. We're creating and educating students for jobs that are not even created yet, for problems that haven't even come up yet. And so our job is to really get them to think critically on these issues that we have, and not just like, oh, we're doing it all wrong. It's more like, all right, I think I have an idea on how we can work on the product stage so that the raw material supply doesn't have to come like this, or the construction doesn't have to create all this oil that's going into the ocean and all this other stuff. So we're decarbonizing little by little the entire life cycle, not just the building. It's something, for us to think about as educators and for our students to think about. This here is a nice, cute little energy house that you could use in your classroom where you don't have to use those big, we had really big Home Depot boxes, big insulation, very, very big. But we found that this energy house did very similar things. You can also use like shoe boxes or Amazon boxes, get some insulation or bubble wrap, and give your students some materials and even have them maybe shop. If you gave them a budget, they can practice doing that. You can have them work in groups and give them different tasks, like, all right, who's the architect, who's the engineer here, who's doing this part. We even ended the day off with this activity with a real estate agent, quote unquote, where the students and the educators had to sell their home, showing us the amenities of their home. And so thinking about the strengths of your students, not everyone is like really loves or is able to like maybe build or like the crafty part, but maybe they're a talker. Like I have students who are talkers and I put them in front. They did great selling the house. But for the whole other part, they were like playing around, da, da, da. But they shined because they were able to now talk in front of the group. Everyone's watching them and they're selling this house that they made and they were able to do that. So, allowing them to see that this is not just a job for only the scientists and engineers, right? It's a it's a community job that where they see fit, we can all be a part of this change that's happening little by little. But this one is it's from Need. You can order the material, the box, straight from their website, or you can do something similar with grabbing your, whatever materials you get after this holiday season. You'll have a lot of boxes from Amazon, saving them, having them use the bubble wrap and tape. And, I really like when my students had to budget because they'll come up the first time we did it, I didn't do a budget, and they'll come up and like, oh, I need more of this. And I'm like, wait. I don't have a gazillion pieces of this, but so let's do a budget. So then they were like, all right, we used our budget here. We can't get any more bubble wrap. Where can we save like this? So I really enjoy them having that conversation in their groups as you're walking around. You can hear them making these real adult choices on building a property, building a home, which is really cool to see them do. Once they get started, in the beginning, they're like, it's a little overwhelming. Like, I have to build a house that does this. But once they get started, they love it. Something to think about is your classroom space, the time that you're giving them to do so, whether it's a week-long project or if it's like a semester long, and then you have place to store it little by little. But that's a really, really cool activity to do. We already chatted a little bit about environmental justice, but one of the changes that they want to see is that at least 35% of the benefits directed to the underserved community. So 35% of the jobs, or or if there's a new hospital or daycare, whatever is being built, it needs to be able to benefit the community in which it's going to be put in. And so having our students think about, do they want to serve in government or local government, and why local government's important, being able to talk to people who are making these changes, and not just being a recipient, more like, I'm sitting at the table and this is what's happening in my community. Let me be proactive about that. This was the environmental justice here. Oh, and this here is back up again. But so for WHYMAKER, before we finish up, I want to explain what WHYMAKER does. Is there any questions on any of the activities that you saw, anything about the New York State Climate Act, and how you might put it into your classroom setting? All right. So WHYMAKER has provides professional development in design thinking, project-based learning, clean energy, science investigations, computer science, STEM, and technology. And so we do travel around New York State and New York City to help provide these professional developments for schools. Also writing STEM curriculum for the government and companies, many different companies, ed tech products, STEM and computer science, robotics technology, and clean energy utilities. And then WHYMAKER also sells STEM products. So anything that you're looking for to purchase, you can order for your STEM classroom through their website. They are you're able to purchase with, if you're a New York City public school teacher, you can purchase through them as well. Okay. That is it.
Thank you so much.
Any of the resources you can find right here. You're welcome.
Thank you. I do have a question, actually. I'm not positive who we have ever, specifically on the call, but we do service and work with a lot of people in the after school system. So, or out of school time educators. So I'm curious, does WHYMAKER, when it comes to the Climate Act resources, do you have resources that are available to educators, like on your website or anything like that? Any of these activities?
Yes, a lot of these activities are located on the website. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Awesome.
They're all
maybe I'll share that in the link then too, in the email when we send out a post email as well, if that's helpful to everyone here too.
Perfect. Yeah, there's so many different activities that we do. We use solar fountain. We had students do a design challenge on the solar fountains, where we're telling them hey, can you beautify your backyard of your school using these materials? And they go ahead and use solar panels to create a nice fountain using, they found like leaves and grass and flowers from outside, and they're able to beautify their fountain. We always do the wind turbine activity. Students go ahead and build the wind turbines using blades, and they're able to design their own blades. And they think about what's the importance of the shape of the blade, the angle of the blade, how the distance it is, thinking about that. So there's so many different really cool clean energy activities that our students love, that helps them get like, oh, okay, this is pretty good. We're on the side of the good side of this part. Like, hey, how can we make changes to get better, versus this is all the things that we did bad. This is where we went wrong. We want to make sure our students know that there is a way, and they're a part of that, helping us make those get to the solution.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's a great point, to keep the positive with students and get them exploring and creative.